Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Tuesday, April 14th, 2020 Board of Selectmen's meeting. I'll read the agenda. At 7 o'clock, we have citizens input. 7:05, we have a COVID-19 informational update. 7:15, we have a Flynn dog hearing. 7:45, 2020 town elections and town meeting discussion. 8 o'clock, local options regarding real estate taxes. 8:10, Assistant Town Manager's Update. 8:20, Town Manager's Update. 8:30, Selectmen's Update, and then we'll have a few action items. Bill, you want to lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, seeing no one here for citizens input, anything come in remotely? No. Okay. So we might as well go right to the COVID-19 update. Bill?
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just a number of things to report out to you. The Health Department has recently organized its website related to COVID-19, and the department continues to update the COVID-19 information and resources at its website, which most people know by now, so I'll forego the reading of it. But we now have updated guidance as well for food establishments operating during the COVID-19 crisis, and it was received from the FDA last week, and it was shared with the Foxborough's operators. The Health Department shared links from the state's website and for resources available to businesses with operators in town who may be struggling during the current state of emergency. Updated supermarket guidance was received from the Commonwealth and shared with the markets in town. The Health Department received a donation of homemade masks last week from Susan Gillis, who I'll speak to later on in this presentation, working with the JCs for Townhall employees who continue to go out into the community. The Board of Health continues to answer complaints and provide clarification on questions regarding state of guidance during the COVID-19 situation. And the Massachusetts Department of Public Health releases updated case counts and related demographics daily at the www.gov/info/-details/COVID-19 cases quarantine and monitoring. Let me just give you the latest figures that I have for the community right this time. It looks like currently at this point there in Foxborough we currently have a total of 23 cases that are currently being tracked. We've had a total of 45 cases since the beginning. A total of 22 folks have recovered. 318 cases have tested negative. There are no hospitalizations at this time, which is good news. 23 positive cases being tracked at this time. On the statewide level, we currently have 26,867 cases. That was as of 4 o'clock this afternoon. 844 deaths. And in Norfolk County alone, there are 2,838 cases of COVID-19 being tracked. 8.7% of the cases are hospitalized at this time. So with respect to some of the other things going on, the Foxborough Fire and Rescue Department, the Foxborough Police Department, and SEMRIC have all assisted with the Mass DPH and MEMA in establishing COVID-19 testing site at Gillette Stadium. The site was taken down yesterday due to the weather conditions, but was reestablished again today. Statewide, there have been over 122,000 COVID-19 tests performed, and that level of testing will continue for at least until the apex of the cases has been reached. Testing has been determined by the experts to be the key for allowing the economy to re-engage. Once we have the ability to do testing as often as needed, that will be a significant bellwether in whether and how the economy will be set back into motion. There are different theories on when this will happen, but we are pleased with the progress being made and the amount of testing and medical capacity the state is building to address the surge impact of cases. This week we are expecting to be the key weeks. This week and next will be the 2 key weeks. We keep saying 2 weeks, but this truly we believe is the weeks that we're going to see the larger numbers start to come through. Our COVID-19 task force met again yesterday, and I'm proud of the level of coordination and cooperation we are getting from all of our agencies. I truly believe that the relatively low level of cases that we have here in Foxborough has been attributed to the level of cooperation that we have had from the public, the level of coordination of effort, and the consistent messaging that we endeavored to provide about the impact here in Foxborough. But that effort must remain in place if we are to stay ahead of the impact to the community. The mass donated by Susan Gillis and the members of the Foxborough JCs has been tremendous. Now, just to read to you a letter that Susan sent to us just the other day about that. If I can just find it here. Bear with me for 1 second. Yeah, here we go. It was nice to speak with you this morning. Thank you for your time, and thank you for what you are doing to help protect Foxborough. Here are a couple of masks that are actually the large size to wear over other masks. So they actually sent me with actually instructions as to how to use it, which is even better. So there was a lot more information out there, and also a lot of important than how to use cloth masks. But she was the one that actually gave me the information as to that if you're going to wash a cloth mask, you don't put it into a dryer because it will shrink and it will actually take the significant aspects of the mask will actually deteriorate if you do that. So you're better off to air dry it and make sure that it's clean that way. But certainly use it, clean it as often as needed. This is important here. If you are able to, perhaps you can mention the amazing good efforts that so many women in the community are generating and giving to this mask-making effort. There were a lot of women doing that. Started this group with a small post on Foxborough discussion a few weeks ago because I felt it was needed to do something to support the medical community during this time. The response was amazing. People mostly from Foxborough, but also from Walpole, Plainville, Rentham, Sharon, and even further have been sewing masks daily in this effort. I started the Facebook group making masks to save lives, and now we have almost 150 members. Those that cannot sew have been donating fabric and elastic. It has been amazing.
The whole thing, yeah.
I think I told you that our donated mask count was 944. It's actually 1,058 as of today.
GG.
We have donated masks to nurses in several hospitals and senior care facilities, homeless shelters, soup kitchens, corrections offices, police departments, local cashiers, senior communities, nursing homes, caretakers, delivery personnel, food pantry volunteers, veterans, school lunch volunteers, visiting nurses, immune-compromised individuals, and the list goes on and on. It always gives everyone it lifts everyone's spirits when they know they are appreciated, and this is a group of people sewing and donating daily, and they are the true heroes. I encourage everyone to visit the Facebook page if you have a chance to see how many amazing people this group is. So I want to say personally thank you to Susan Gillis and all the efforts that are being made by the ladies who have donated their time and efforts for this fine effort. It doesn't go unnoticed. I mean, there are so many great heroes going on throughout the community nowadays, and so many great stories. A lot of negative stories, as we know, but there's also a lot of great stories that are going on as well. Let me just to say a few other things that have been going on. The Veterans Meals Program that I saw Ali Rodriguez earlier today, and she informed me that the effort put forth by the veterans community and the Partners in Patriotism and the Craft Organization has resulted in the distribution of over 500,000 meals for veterans and the truly needy. Mark Craig, and who's been working around the clock over at the Council on Aging with, today worked on the toilet paper donation program, courtesy of Next Gen Supply, and I was certainly very grateful for their efforts on that. The donation of PPE and the reach out to all the elder citizens and our most vulnerable residents has been remarkable. Recreation has been doing their part in the great programs they're putting out on Facebook on a regular basis. The Uptown Happenings group has been doing a great effort to help support and promote the restaurants that are going on throughout town through takeout programs, and we're really happy to see that is making its mark as well. Despite all the challenges going on throughout the town, the region, the state, the country, and throughout the world, there are a lot of good things that we should continue to remind ourselves that are going on throughout this community. And I think this is the story that we should talk about more often, because every day we're talking about what's the downside of what's been going on, but there are some great things going on as well. And I just wanted to share a little bit of that on a positive note tonight as part of this report. So thank you.
Thank you, Bill. We have a 7:15 public hearing. Until then, why don't we do some action items?
Okay, sure.
First one, make a motion to accept a $55 donation to the Veteran Services from an anonymous donor.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion to accept a donation of $50 to the Fire Department from an anonymous donor.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Motion to accept a donation of $135 to the Boyden Library in memory of Judith Young from Barbara and Bob Howard, Bob Smith, and Susan and Saul Marsh.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Motion to approve a common vitular and 7-day entertainment license for Starbucks Coffee Store, number 59326, on 74 Washington Street, Foxborough, Mass.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Motion to reappoint David J. Brown as a regular member of the board for a 3-year term to expire on May 1st, 2023.
Second.
Any further discussion?
What is David on? It didn't-
Ours says zoning board of appeals.
Board of Appeals.
Okay, thank you. Motion to reappoint Lorraine Brew and Curt Kegan as an associate member of the board for a 1-year term to expire on May 1st, 2021.
Second.
Any further discussion?
No, under discussion, we never actually voted on David.
Right.
We
we'll-
discussed it.
We'll do this one, we'll go back to David in a second. Yeah, I remember that too. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We'll go back to the David one. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Still being a few minutes ahead, Mike, you want to do Assistant Town Manager's report, or is it going to be lengthy?
No, it'll be quick.
Okay.
I really just wanted to shout out to some people that really made a huge difference in the community. First of all, Mike Weber at Foxborough Cable Access TV. He's been out every single night, day, doing these meetings. This is a new thing. He never looks for any recognition. Thank you, Mike. For our IT team, who's also been going 24/7, keeping our systems up and running. Public Safety, Dispatch, our DPW team, who was especially busy yesterday, our essential workers, our volunteers like Bill just mentioned, of course our healthcare providers, our family and residents who are teaching and learning from home, a new thing, and all of those who have been staying home to keep it safe for those who need to leave their home. So shout out to all those. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mike. All right, we'll go ahead and read the public notice, or should we wait another 2 minutes?
I think everybody's here is going to be here, right? I think
Yeah.
we just need to wait on Kate. Is she going to join us?
So I'm on. Can you guys hear me?
We can
Oh,
hear
we
you.
can hear you, yeah. We can't.
Okay,
we
and I
can't
need
see
to
you.
explain, the G Cirillo, that's me. That's my 15-year-old daughter's computer because mine was not working.
We're not seeing you though, Kate, so,
Yeah, we couldn't get the camera to work either, which I mentioned to Cristina earlier.
okay, all right, very good.
I think as long as you can hear me, we're good. If somebody has any advice as to how to get the video working, I'd be happy to.
I'm-
Did you
I'm
see
not
the start
technically
video
proficient
button
with
down
it.
by where your
Yeah.
mute button is?
Yeah, okay, hold on.
Oh, there you
Oh,
are.
there you go.
Pardon
Good work.
me.
And then if you need to mute when you're not talking, I just recommend using that mute button too.
Okay.
Excellent.
All right, great.
Here we go.
Do you want to start, Bill, or do you want me to give, or Doc, or do you want me to give an
We're gonna
overview
read-
of what we need to do?
Kate, we're going to read the notice first.
Okay.
The Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, April 14th, 2020, at 7:15 PM in the Gala Meeting Room, Town Hall, 40 South Street, Foxborough, Mass., in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 140, Section 157, and Chapter 78 of the Code of the Town of Foxborough, to determine whether the dog owned by Debra J. Flynn and David G. Flynn of 7 Connie Drive, Foxborough, Mass., is a nuisance dog or a dangerous dog, and based on the findings, may make such an order concerning the restraint or euthanasia of such dog as may be deemed necessary. Due to the current COVID-19 public health crisis. Anyone wishing to provide input may send by email to bkeegan@foxboromass.gov or mail to Bill Keegan, 40 South Street, Foxborough, Mass. 02035 by 4 p.m. on Tuesday, April 14th, 2020. Your input will be read into the record.
Okay, thank you.
I do have one letter but that is from the owners of the dog. That's the only input that I've received.
In our packet, though, didn't I see a letter from the aggrieved family, too?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, if I may, Mr. Moderator, Mr. Chairman, the animal control officer did reach out to the owners of the victim dog and got a statement. So that should be read into the record. And part of the reason that I'm recommending you read things into the record tonight is that the owners of the dog who is the subject of this hearing requested that their entire letter be read into the record. Not in the letter itself, but in a chain of emails, which they sent to the town. So everything should be read into the record. It doesn't sound like there are too many more letters, but the animal control officer's report, the dog owner who the subject of this hearing, and the owner of the victim dog. And one other point I just want to make before we all get started is it would probably be helpful to do the swearing in of any witnesses who are going to testify at the beginning, just so that we don't forget as we're going on with reading documents and so forth.
Okay,
Yeah,
that looks like that's...
let's do that now.
It's going to be Casey at this point. I don't know of anybody else that's going to testify at this hearing. Am I correct?
Yep.
All right. So Casey, you want to raise your right hand? Swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, thank you.
So, Kate, where should we start? Should we start with an explanation of what happened? Do we just start with reading, maybe start with the ACO's report?
Let me start with explaining what the two options are that the board's
Okay.
going to review tonight. And then, yes, I would start with the ACO's report and any of the other reports from the police department about the incident. I believe there was another police officer who reported in. But essentially, and I sent a summary to the board of the two avenues. You're making a decision tonight on two things, whether the board, or one of two things, whether the board determines that the dog is a nuisance, in which case you have certain options on how to remediate the issue, or whether the dog is dangerous. And there are many more options, I believe about 7 options available if the board determines the dog is dangerous based on the ACO's report and other facts that come into the record. If you determine that the dog is a nuisance, you can restrain the dog and provide requirements that the homeowner will do with the dog at home. If you determine that the dog is dangerous based on this incident in the ACO's report, then there are multiple other things, 7 itemized, and you can read through them. I'm not going to read through them unless somebody thinks that that would be helpful, but 7 different options ranging from restraining the dog on the property all the way to euthanasia as the ultimate remedy. And if it's determined that euthanasia, first of all, if it's determined that the dog is dangerous and euthanasia being the most extreme remedy, if that is determined to be appropriate for this situation, the dog needs to be impounded during the appeals period because the owners have 10 days to appeal. So with that, I would then suggest that you explain the background of what happened and what was reported to the town officials by the ACO, and then the positions of the various parties involved.
Okay, Casey, you're up.
All right, so I don't have my full police report in front of me.
Would you like a
I
copy
can-
of it?
Yeah, that's fine. All right, on Saturday, March 21st, 2020, an incident occurred across the street from 7 Connie Drive involving a dog that resided at 7 Connie Drive, Lincoln, a large, primarily red mixed breed, 4-year-old neutered male dog, and a puppy that resided at 9 Connie Drive, Teddy, a brown golden doodle 12-week-old male dog. On Monday, March 23rd, 2020, I had a bite report from Mass General Healthcare Center for Melissa O'Connor of 9 Connie Drive. the owner of Teddy. According to the report, Miss O'Connor had been bitten by Lincoln on her right second finger, thumb, and hand. When I contacted Miss O'Connor, she stated she was bitten by Lincoln while attempting to stop him from attacking Teddy. According to Miss O'Connor, she was walking Teddy on a leash when she was across the street from 7 Connie Drive. She saw Lincoln coming towards her. She stated he didn't seem like he was acting aggressive, and the man in the yard, later identified as David Flynn, called out to the dog, and he stopped and turned around to look at him, and then kept going towards Miss Connor. Once he got up to them, he grabbed Teddy and began shaking him. She tried stopping him and was bitten by him in the process. She stated it was so quick. I asked if the puppy had done anything such as jump on Lincoln or bark at him. She stated he only sat there. I explained there would be a quarantine process and that I would speak with the owners about the situation and that there may be a dog hearing to determine what to do with the dog. Miss O'Connor stated that she was a dog lover and did not want the dog to be euthanized, but that it was very concerning. I explained I would look into the entire situation before making that decision. Next, I contacted Debbie Flynn, the owner of Lincoln, according to his town license. I informed Miss Flynn I needed to come out and issue the quarantine and a citation. She stated I could, and we planned for me to come out at 10:30 a.m. that morning. When I arrived at 7 Connie Drive, I was greeted at the door by Miss Flynn. She came out and began to explain this was an uncommon situation. She stated that they had some trees removed in the backyard and the gate was left open. She also stated her brother David Flynn was the one who was home at the time. Mr. Flynn had joined us on the porch by this time. Lincoln was brought to the door so I could see him, but was not brought outside, and I did not enter the house. He did not growl or act in a threatening manner at this time. Mr. Flynn stated Lincoln handled Teddy the same way he would his toy, and both Mr. and Miss Flynn felt that he must have confused Teddy for a toy. They stated he had a toy that looked just like Teddy. Mr. Flynn stated he just picked up the puppy and began shaking him extremely hard, just as he does with his toys, but did not act aggressively otherwise. Miss Flynn stated she had adopted Lincoln about 2.5 years ago from a rescue. She stated he was owner surrendered with a small dog and no other information was given. She stated she had never seen any sort of aggression from him, and there had never been an issue between him and the other dog in the home, which is a large German Shepherd. She stated she had already decided to put an electric fence up and had contacted somebody. I told her that could be helpful. I informed her that this would need to be brought to the attention of the Board of Selectmen and provisions would be put into place and recommendations made. She stated she did not want the dog euthanized. I told her I did not plan to recommend that, but that I still needed to see the vet records and I planned to speak with a dog trainer prior to making my recommendations. I issued the quarantine paperwork and the citation and left. When I arrived back at my office, I called Foxborough Animal Hospital and requested that the vet records for the puppy pertaining to the incident. I then contacted a dog trainer, Sue Thibodeau, to get a second opinion on the behavior of the dog. At this point, I had not yet received the vet records. While speaking with Ms. Thibodeau, she stated the dog should not have mistaken the puppy for the toy and should have known immediately that it was not the puppy, and put the puppy down. He also should not have bitten the owner of the puppy if he truly thought the puppy was a toy. She felt this situation would definitely occur again, and given the chance, it was a concern of safety. I later received the medical records, which indicated the puppy arrived deceased. He had multiple puncture wounds on trunk and cervical region, with severe diffuse subcutaneous emphysema, which is air under the skin. Suspected body wall punctures and a pneumothorax, which is a collapsed lung. I decided to speak with the vet who saw the puppy, Dr. Reed. She stated the punctures were severe, but the dog was not torn to pieces, just badly punctured. She also stated the puppy had died from the collapsed lung from being punctured. She also stated, given the injury she observed, this was a severe attack. On Tuesday, March 24th, 2020, I contacted Ms. Flynn, explained that at this point, given all the information I had gathered after meeting with her, I felt that the dog was a safety issue. I explained the bites were so deep and severe that it shows the dog's lack of bite inhibition and the likeliness of this reoccurring due to the amount of damage he will cause when he bites. I explained to her this was only a recommendation and that I would be sending this to the Board of Selectmen to make the final decision. I explained how the process would work and that I would be in contact with her. She stated she had already left a message for her vet, Dr. Trapani, so she could get her vet's opinion. She had also adopted a dog that was showing aggressive behaviors in the home to people, and her vet advised her to return the dog, but that she could understand. I told her not to euthanize the dog without letting me know first if that was a decision they were going to make on their own, since the dog was still under quarantine. I also advised her to speak with a trainer and get their opinion as well. I informed her I could speak with them as well if she would like. She said thank you, and she would let me know the next day after having time to think about it. I later received a call from Dr. Trapani, who stated the dog had always been nice to her and never showed any sign of aggression. She felt that there did not seem to be an autopsy done and no pictures to go off of, so we couldn't be sure how bad it was. I told her thank you for her input on the dog's behavior for what she had seen. I contacted the Foxborough Animal Hospital to find out if they had taken any pics of the puppy or if they still had the remains. They stated they were picked up earlier in the day by the company who does the cremation. I contacted the company, Final Gift, and they still had the puppy but would need permission for pictures to be taken. I contacted Miss O'Connor and explained since no one had taken any pictures, I felt it could be helpful if we needed them. She agreed and contacted Final Gift to hold the puppy until I was able to obtain pictures. Final Gift did not want me to enter the building due to the state mandated closing of business and social distancing, but he did agree to send me pictures and asked that I acknowledge and send an email to release the puppy for cremation. When he sent me the pictures, he stated the puppy was very frozen and had a lot of hair, so he could not get pictures of all of the injuries, but did send one and got pictures of the size of the puppy. On Wednesday, March 25th, 2020, when I arrived in my office, I had an email from Miss Flynn, which is attached to this report for reference. I also attached pictures and a copy of the vet records. At this time, all info pertaining to this issue will be sent over to the Board of Selectmen, and I have nothing further to report.
Casey, would you also mind reading, I think in that is, further on is the police officer that also, would you mind reading that too?
This is a preliminary report by Patrolman Kelly Colvin. It may or may not contain all facts known to this officer or to other members of the Foxborough Police Department. It is solely intended to satisfy the probable cause requirements of the complaint application. Unless otherwise specified, all streets and ways referred to in this report are public ways in the town of Foxborough. Any information contained here relating to the recognition, identification, and effects of alcohol, drugs, or drug paraphernalia is based on my training and experience as a police officer. On Saturday, March 21st, 2020, at approximately 13:06 hours, I was assigned to the east sector in the town of Foxborough and marked Cruiser 24. At the above-mentioned date and time, I was dispatched to respond to 7 Connie Drive for a report of a dog fight that occurred where one person was injured while breaking it up. When I arrived, I met with Mr. David Flynn, who resides at 7 Connie Drive. He said that his sister Debra's dog, Lincoln, Foxborough ID tag 2020-1607, had gotten loose from his yard, and he ran into the street and attacked a puppy that was being walked on leash by Miss Melissa O'Connor, who resides at 9 Connie Drive. Miss O'Connor was being treated by Foxborough Fire. As I was speaking with Mr. Flynn, I then spoke to Miss Debra Flynn, who had her vaccine and license paperwork for Lincoln. She said that Lincoln got loose from the yard and ran into the street where Miss O'Connor was walking her dog on leash. I spoke with Miss O'Connor, who reported the same. She said she was walking her dog on leash on the street when her neighbor's dog Lincoln ran into the roadway and latched onto her puppy and began shaking it violently. Miss O'Connor attempted to get Lincoln to release his bite from the puppy but was unsuccessful. While attempting to do this, Lincoln bit her right hand and she sustained some moderate puncture wounds, which were treated on scene. Mr. Flynn also had some minor lacerations on his hand from trying to separate the dogs. He refused treatment. Miss O'Connor's puppy was transported by her neighbor to the Foxborough Animal Hospital on Mechanic Street, where it had to be euthanized due to the injuries it sustained in the attack. A copy of this report will be forwarded to the Animal Control Officer for follow-up. I have nothing to report at this time.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, was that the animal control officer, since I can't see her, reading a report of a police officer?
That second report was from a police officer that went to the scene after, right after the dog bite.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that in the record. The other thing that we need at this point is the statute requires that you state what the complaint is. So the animal control officer is the one who initiated this when the report was made to her. And if we could have a recommendation as to whether she's recommending that this be deemed a nuisance dog or a dangerous dog, then that would be helpful for the board in making its determination.
So my primary recommendation is that the dog be deemed as a dangerous dog. Ultimately, I professionally think that this dog should be euthanized. I think it is a danger. I think it is a public safety issue at this point. I mean, there are other options that can go along with deeming a dog as dangerous, but I think ultimately the dog is definitely dangerous.
At this point, Casey, first time I saw the Dr. Ian Dunbar's dog bite scale was just about 20 minutes ago.
Mm-hmm.
Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
Could you, would the board be okay with Casey going over that scale?
I think that would be helpful.
Okay, so this scale primarily refers to bites to humans, but it can also be used to kind of judge a bite on an animal as well. So basically, what we're looking at is a level 4 and a level 5 bite from Lincoln. I don't want to say level 6 because it wasn't death to a human, it was death to an animal. But ultimately, do you want me to read the entire scale?
No, really just do 4 and 5 for us.
Okay,
because-
so a level 4 is 1 to 4 punctures from a single bite with at least 1 puncture deeper than half the length of the dog's canine teeth. May also have deep bruising around the wound, where the dog held on for so many seconds and bore down, or lacerations in both directions from the dog holding on, and it shook its head from side to side. A level fight is a multiple bite incident with at least 2 level 4 bites, or multiple attack incident with at least 1 level 4 bite in each. So the bite to the person would easily be considered a level 4. Absolutely, no question about that. And the fact that he did both bite the puppy and the handler of the puppy so severely, that's why I would say we could consider possible level 5 for this, so.
Should I read in the Flynn's letter at this point?
Yes, this would be a good time to read in their letter, because as I said earlier, they did request that the entire thing be read into the record because they couldn't make it to the hearing, given the quarantine situation.
Okay. So at this point, the Flynn's did not come to this meeting, Debbie and David. They did write a letter that all the board members received. I think you received the letter too,
Yep.
Casey. Yep. Everybody involved got a copy of the letter, and they asked that we read this into the official record. Dear Board of Selectmen, we respectfully ask that you read this letter in its entirety before making your decision at the, she had put down AOC's recommendation to euthanize our family dog Lincoln. It has been stated to us that you typically just accept the recommendation, and therefore we would appreciate the ability to advocate to the impartial board for our dog's life. We have lived in Foxborough our entire lives, and we are responsible dog owners. We would never house a dangerous, aggressive dog. Lincoln is a 4 to 5 year old, 70-pound German Shepherd mix on paper. He was advertised through rescue as a golden retriever mix, and the actual DNA is Shepherd, Schnauzer, Cocker Spaniel, Border Collie, which classifies him as a mutt. He was surrendered with a little dog in Kentucky with reason of family couldn't afford to take care of them anymore. He was advertised as good with adults, kids, and dogs. He was at a foster home before he came to us and showed no sign of aggression to humans or dogs, big or small. They did not have a read on cats. We have had Lincoln for nearly 2 years. In May, we will celebrate his 2nd anniversary with us. We have not seen or experienced any aggressive behavior with family, friends, strangers, and dogs of any size. Lincoln is a sweet, kind, gentle, lovable dog. If we had to find any fault, it would be he barks, but it is controllable by us as owners. When he barks, his tail is wagging. A tragic event happened on Saturday, March 21st, 2020, with Lincoln getting out of our fenced-in yard. We had tree work being done, and we were exiting the yard. It was not realized that Lincoln was with us. We accept the responsibility that he was out of the fenced-in yard. He did not bolt out of the yard when he realized he was out, as most honest dog owners can recall such a bolt out of an open door and having to chase a dog to come back can attest to. He walked out of the yard and proceeded to walk to the street where our next-door neighbor was standing with her 4-month-old puppy, Teddy, and her older small dog, both on leashes. He did not charge the group. Lincoln walked up, smelled the puppy, and as we have learned, a puppy has a different smell than an adult dog. He grabbed him and shook him. He had sensed something that didn't belong in the group. He would not release him, and the more he was screamed and yelled at, the more scared he got and held on to what he had very tightly. When Lincoln finally dropped Teddy, he ran back to the gate he got out of. We brought him in the house, and he stood still for 20 minutes in the kitchen, almost like saying, "What did I do?" The remainder of the day, he was very quiet and sad, following my brother around for what is probably the last thing he remembered is my brother yelling. In the process of the owners trying to get the puppy out of Lincoln's mouth, our neighbor was bit by Lincoln, and my brother was bit by Teddy. Unfortunately, Teddy passed due to the severity of his injuries, and our hearts go out to our neighbors for their terrible loss. All parties involved truly thought Lincoln thought that it was a toy, for it resembled one he played with. Lincoln played with this toy by biting, shaking, tug-of-war, and cuddling. But the question with us, as his owners, was why? Since we have had him, he never exhibited this behavior. He did chase animals, birds, chipmunks, squirrels, and bunnies, but he is a dog. Before we could advocate for Lincoln's life, we had to understand his behavior and why he did what he did. If only Lincoln could talk, or we could get into his head to find out why. With further education, research, and talking to trainers, rescues, and the internet, we understand now that Lincoln is not a dangerous, aggressive, or bad dog. He is a dog with predative behavior and is dictated by sensory. Some forms of this behavior is common in most dogs, some high, some not, depending on breed. Typically, training can't correct this, but strict management can. Following the mass dog laws with leash and fenced-in yards is how this is managed. We followed both as responsible owners. This was truly an accident. Lincoln left his fenced-in yard. He is not the type of dog that tries to get out of the house or the yard. The AOC never even spoke of such behavior as possible reason for the tragedy. We would think her credentials would have early on made this type of behavior something that she should be acutely aware of, and would have educated us at the time she came to the house. We want the board to know that she had early on given us every reason to believe that it would be treated as the tragic accident we all know it was. Now, in direct response to the ACO's recommendation report, we would like to supplement her report with what we feel is the rest of the story. We recognize that our emotions were high and some information could have been misunderstood, but we feel that the report is missing vital information, statements and facts, and with that being said, our feeling is that it is one-sided. There is an assumption that we are familiar with process, which was not the case, nor was it ever explained to us. We had mixed signals, messages from the start of this. Below is a synopsis of our memory of the events. When we spoke to the ACO on March 23rd on the phone, we were told that she would recommend Lincoln not be euthanized for our neighbors are also dog lovers, although the incident was scary. She also stated that this was typical behavior of a German Shepherd, which I had to correct that it was not my German Shepherd that did this. When ACO came to the house to issue citation and quarantine, she did not want to meet Lincoln, for we insisted that she see him so she could put a visual with a recommendation. At no time did she interact or evaluate with the dog. She also did not have a trainer come and interact and evaluate the dog, giving us every signal that our recall of our interaction with her is factual. This was never mentioned in her report. We spoke about what happened at the time. We were under the assumption Lincoln was not going to be euthanized per my conversation on the phone, and we were thinking out loud of what we might do to keep him, maybe electric fence, but the condition was only if our neighbors Melissa and Jamie agreed. We also stated that we were going to give them time to grieve their terrible loss. Both my brother and I did not hear the ACO say that this could change once she talked to a trainer, and nothing was said about the vet medical record of Teddy. We want to draw attention to this as it had become the focus of her report. Not that it makes a difference in the final outcome, but we would have an opportunity to ask more questions of her, as she is the animal control officer that had never conveyed that this would be done. Clearly, we knew that the vet report would not be good due to the severity of the injuries and the puppy's loss of life, and that this would be considered understood by us all. We both thought she said she would maybe have to bring Lincoln for training. At this time, we also inquired about Melissa's bite, and response was okay and healing. Within 24 hours, we were contacted by the ACO with an overturn of a recommendation due to the severity of Teddy's medical record and Melissa's bite, and now Lincoln should be euthanized. Also not mentioned in the report, which we feel shows our character as responsible dog owners, is that we wanted to acknowledge that we would accept 100% financial responsibility with Melissa and Jamie to reimburse them for the puppy, Teddy, and all expenses incurred. We told her that we would talk about that with the owners at the appropriate time, as we felt we wanted to give them the space they needed to grieve. Also mentioned in the report, but not in great detail, that we had told the ACO is that we had rescued a dog 3 years ago, and after 6 months, we, with the help of the trainers, our vet, Dr. Trapani, returned him, Newton, to the rescue because he had fear aggressions with people. In fear of him hurting our family, friends, and neighbors, we returned him to Tennessee. We actually drove him down there, for we thought that the transport of him up here caused or had something to do with his behavior. We've stated previously we would not house a dangerous dog. We feel that this is a material fact of our proven abilities to react accordingly and act quickly. In our opinion, the ACO report was more focused on the details of the attack. The focus was more on the severity, not the nature. All parties didn't need pictures. Sadly, it will remain in our minds forever. We actually feel that the presentation was to amplify the report in an attempt to persuade the ACO's report and subsequent recommendation to the board, and, quite frankly, to add insult to the injury of all parties involved. Furthermore, stating that she requested the owner give permission was going a little overboard on the report. No one doubted what had happened or the severity. We feel that this was done for the board's benefit only and to enhance her recommendation and influence and motivate the board to accept her findings. With all that being said, we respectfully request that the decision for Lincoln is that he should not be euthanized or classified as a dangerous dog in the town of Foxborough. We feel we should have the right to keep him only if our neighbors Melissa and Jamie concur, for it is they who experienced the terrible loss, or to rehome him or possibly return him to the rescue. For that is up in the air right now due to the coronavirus. There is no foster homes available, so he would have to go to a kennel. That breaks our hearts, for this has already happened to him once. He really is a good dog and doesn't realize he did anything wrong. Melissa and Jamie previously stated they didn't want him euthanized. We are responding to you via this letter due to the coronavirus distancing and stay-at-home advisory as directed by the governor. If you would like to speak with us, we are available by phone. Sincerely, David Flynn and Debbie Flynn. There was also a recommendation from the aggrieved. Should we read that also?
Yes.
I had it here a second ago.
All statements should be read into the record just because the dog owners requested that their statement be read into the record, so just for fairness.
I'm sorry, say that again. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I'm recommending that you read everything into the record because the dog owners, whose dog is the subject of this hearing, had requested that their letter be read into the record, so you should read the other letters as well.
Okay, so this is a letter or a email to the board from Melissa O'Connor and Jamie Kelly. I guess it was to you, Casey.
Yeah.
Thank you, Casey. I will provide a statement. To the Foxborough Board of Selectmen, on Saturday, March 21st, a very uncomfortable event took place in front of our home on 9 Connie Drive.
Unfortunate.
I'm sorry, thank you. Yep. Unfortunate event took place in front of our home on 9 Connie Drive. I was walking my 10-year-old Bichon Frise dog and my 4-month-old puppy on their leashes. The next-door neighbors, the Flynns, were having tree work done, and one of their dogs, Lincoln, got out of the fenced yard. He ran toward us, and when David Flynn whistled, he stopped and then continued toward us. Lincoln went right at our puppy and latched on and started to shake him back and forth like a dog would do to a toy. Our Teddy sustained injuries and passed away that day before he was sent to the vet. It was an extremely traumatic event for all involved. As someone who has had dogs my whole life, we all know we can never be in the mind of a dog. My family would like to see Lincoln placed back into his foster home out of state. At no point will our Teddy come back, but it will not make us feel better euthanizing the Flynn's dog Lincoln. We would feel better knowing that he was away and not coming back because we have decided to get another puppy. Our puppy is not available until May 18th or later, so if Lincoln could be relocated by then, it would be greatly appreciated. We have spoken to the Flynns and they were happy to do this. They have written all our neighbors letters and they sent us a nice plant to express their sorrow. They have taken responsibility in this event and we appreciate that. We do understand with the state of the country and COVID-19 that this could be delayed. We just hope that when we pick up our puppy on May 18th or later, that Lincoln will have already been placed back with his foster family out of state. Thank you for considering our recommendation regarding this issue. Best, Melissa O'Connor and Jamie Kelly. That's everything. So, Casey made her opinion known. Any opinion from the board? We're all at a loss.
So, one thing, I mean, we have the option, I think, I don't know, I mean, especially listening to that last statement of placing Lincoln back to its foster family out of state.
So we, you guys can't order that. We can't force them to return the dog. Basically, what decision is made here tonight, they have 10 days afterwards to appeal whatever decision it is. But ultimately, we can't say, okay, well, you know, you can just go and return the dog. We can't order them to rehome the dog, remove the dog, anything like that. In place of euthanizing the dog, there is the opportunity to deem the dog as dangerous, put forth other options for the dog, and then if they so choose to rehome the dog, they can do that. They just have to let whoever it is that's taking the dog know that the dog has been deemed as a dangerous dog. So.
In the Flynns have owned Lincoln for 2 years, and this is the first incident Lincoln's ever had.
Mm-hmm.
I can certainly, based on the letters that were reviewed in front of the board, to see that he could be considered a dangerous dog. But I'm not necessarily in favor of euthanizing the animal if there's another option to go with that, such as transporting the animal back to the original owner, so long as they notify that prior party that he was involved in an incident and is deemed a dangerous dog, or removes it from the community, which I think the family that lost the puppy would probably be a more appropriate punishment.
Yeah, but again, coming back to the problem where we are right now and what the state will allow us to do, one of them is not returning the dog. So we can't declare that the dog be returned back to Tennessee or whatever state it was in. We pretty much have two options. Either a nuisance dog or a dangerous dog. And then if we go under dangerous dog, correct me if I'm wrong, Casey, we've got two options. Euthanize or put a bunch of strict restrictions on the dog that will not allow. And there is a list you guys got of what those restrictions would entail. It would be...
There's a total of 7 of them. One of them does include euthanasia. I came up with a few that I thought would pertain to the situation. That the dog be humanely restrained, provided, however, that no order shall provide that a dog be deemed dangerous, can be chained, tethered, or otherwise tied to an inanimate object, including but not limited to a tree, post, or building. So that way, there are state laws that go over humanely restraining a dog on your property. So it would just have to be within those parameters. Number 2 is that the dog be confined to the premises of the keeper of the dog, provided, however, that confined shall mean securely confined indoors or confined outdoors in a securely enclosed and locked pen or dog run area upon the premises of the owner or keeper. Provided further that such pen or dog run shall have a secure roof, and if such enclosure has no floor secured to the sides thereof, the sides shall be embedded into the ground for not less than 2 feet, and provided further that within the confines such pen or dog run, a dog house or proper shelter from the elements shall be provided to protect the dog. So those two are kind of interchangeable with each other. Either we expect them to humanely restrain or we expect them to confine to the premises. I feel like they're kind of interchangeable there.
Mr. Chairman, there is actually a third option. It's sort of a mixture of the options that were just talked about earlier, and thank you for Case for laying those things out, because, but the important thing is if you listen to what the folks who were impacted by the dog, their dog being killed indicated, they're not comfortable with the dog being in the neighborhood.
Right.
And so I don't know if any kind of restraint would be considered to be acceptable given that circumstance. The other thought is that I don't think either one of the parties wants the dog to be euthanized. All right, so given those kind of restrictions, I think the other option is to see if in fact the owners of the dog can see if the dog can be returned, give them a period of time, say 30 days, to try and see if they can place the dog in back to the original owners and see if that can be done. Otherwise, the only option would be to euthanize the dog. So it does give them an option, and it puts them in a position where they would be able to control the fate of the dog by doing that. So they would have to be, the responsibility would be back on them to try and place the dog back in another place with the conditions, of course, as Kate has properly pointed out, and Casey has properly pointed out, and the chief too, for that matter, that you have to let the people know that this dog has been deemed dangerous. So those conditions have to be placed into the condition, and that, but it has to be
Mr. Chairman,
placed
if I may.
by a certain period of time. So
Yeah, go ahead, Kate.
If I may, I was just reading along, the 7 options that Casey just mentioned are in the memo that I submitted summarizing Chapter 140, Section 157. It does provide for those 7 things if the board determines that it's a dangerous dog. But if the board determines it's a dangerous dog, as Bill just mentioned, and Casey mentioned as well, you cannot order that the dog be returned to anyone, but the owners do, if you deem it a dangerous dog, they have 10 days to appeal, and during the appeal period, the dog needs to be impounded. If they have, and I actually have a question in all of this, if they have someone, previous owner or otherwise, who can take the dog back, then they need to, it's not the town's responsibility to
Right.
tell whoever the person is or the entity is that takes the dog, whether it's a kennel or foster owner or prior owner, but it's the current property owner's, dog owner's responsibility to tell whoever takes this dog that it's a dangerous dog, if that's what the board deems it to be. So my question is, do we know whether the Flynns or anyone else have contacted the kennel owner that previously had the dog, or the foster care, or anyone, to see if they're willing to take the dog?
To my knowledge, they contacted them a little over 2 weeks ago. I guess the board of the rescue met, and last I heard, they were interested in taking the dog back. However, they had no current foster homes right now, and they weren't sure when they would be able to schedule transport given the current situation of the virus. So originally it was supposed to be by the end of the month, and then that changed because of transport issues. So I believe the rescue's in Kentucky, so it's quite a drive.
Okay.
Point of reference, we
So
never got
if the
this
board
document. I never did.
determines that the dog is a dangerous dog, I would recommend that the dog be impounded. But if there is any possibility that and again, this is not, the town is not allowed to do this. You cannot order them to give the dog to somebody out of town. It's specifically prohibited in the statute. But pending appeal, if the owners find someone who's willing to take the dog, provided they inform them and I would recommend in writing, so they've got some evidence that they have informed whoever this is that takes the dog, that the dog has been deemed by the Foxborough Board of Selectmen to be a dangerous dog, if that's the decision, then they can transport the dog to someone. That's the only requirement. And that's under the following statute, which is Chapter 140, Section 157A.
So it then falls back to the owners to make those arrangements. If they truly want the dog not to be euthanized, it'll be up to them to make those arrangements and within the time frame allowed, which is the 10-day appeal period.
Can we put interim measures in place to afford the owners an opportunity to secure?
So we have written into our town bylaws that we can issue a muzzle or restraint order. Typically, it's for 14 days, but you guys can extend that out to whatever you see fit. So that's under our town bylaws, though.
Could they kennel the dog for that same period? Or could I put it in the Mansfield kennel for, say, a 14 or 21-day period?
We don't have that written into our bylaws to kennel the dog. In order for us to take the dog at this point, it would have to be determined that we were planning to euthanize the dog. With the muzzle and restraint order, there is the option of, I believe if the dog's seen out or if there's another issue that occurs, then we could take the dog into the kennels then.
Well, I wonder, though, if in fact the order were to euthanize the dog, but that you would give a period of time before that order would be carried out. There'd be, say, 21 days, 30 days, whatever the case may be. That would be the period at which that happened, but it'd have to be kenneled during the period of time as part of the order. Could that be done, Kate?
Yes, there is an appeals period. And of course, the other thing that we all have to consider is that during this COVID-19 quarantine period, courts are not hearing anything but emergency cases. And I don't think that this would be considered an emergency if the board did decide it's a dangerous dog and if the board did go with the number 7 option, which is euthanasia. The dog would have to be kenneled or impounded in a kennel during the appeal period. If the owners don't appeal, then once the 10 days is up, euthanasia would be the next step. If the owners appeal, then it's up to the courts how long. And I don't know if the board recalls, but we had a situation like this that went on for quite some time as the appeal pended, and the dog stayed impounded in the kennel during that entire time.
So where I was going was, if we can put an interim order to restrain and muzzle the dog for 21 days
Yeah.
and continue the hearing, give the owner time to try and rehome the dog in the interim. And if after 21 days, because of what's going on with the virus, they're gonna need some time. Clearly, the owner and Miss O'Connor, they don't want to see the dog euthanized. I don't think anybody here wants to see the dog euthanized. It's really a timing issue. But if we can put certain guarantees in place that the dog will be restrained and muzzled and give the Flynns time to possibly rehome the dog, and if after 21 days it comes back to the board and there's just no way that they could rehome the dog, then we have to take a hard vote.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Kate, is that kosher?
You could continue the hearing, that is an option, but at some point, the board does need to make a determination, either that it's a nuisance or that it's dangerous, and then if it's dangerous, and I don't know if it's worth Casey going through the 7 options again. Euthanasia is not the only option, but
No, I
I understand, and
that.
Bill, I believe, already mentioned that people, the O'Connors don't want the dog in the area, so based on that, coming down to consideration of either euthanasia or you continue it and give them an opportunity to rehome, that is a possibility.
Do we have to make a determination of dangerous or nuisance tonight to be able to continue it?
No, you can continue it without making that determination, but I would recommend continuing it to a date certain at which you will have to make a determination as to whether it's a nuisance or dangerous dog, and if it's a dangerous dog, what options for remediation you're going to apply.
But I think we should put some interim measures in place.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you continue it to a date certain, put in your decision, it's being continued with the recommendation that the owners, at their request, attempt to find a means of rehoming the dog and put whatever other restraints that you want in the meantime, because there is a concern, I have a concern that if there is another incident in the 21 days and the board hasn't imposed some controls such as muzzling or whatever else the animal control officer recommends, then the town.
But just my thought on this is that you may want to consider kenneling as the only option. Because I say that because that removes the dog from the neighborhood, it removes the threat from the neighborhood, and it also puts the dog in a safe condition that'll be taken care of during that period of time until the hearing, until the matter is revisited by the board. That way, it takes the onus off the board for any potential danger to occur in the neighborhood again.
Casey, can we put as a restriction, the Flynn's
condition.
kennel the dog at their own expense in?
I don't know of any reason why we couldn't. I
I
mean,
think we would probably have to deem the dog dangerous tonight to maybe make that happen.
if the dog gets deemed dangerous tonight, I think they only have 10 days to appeal it. I don't know that we can give them the order of 21 days.
Maybe I'm not making myself clear about this, but I think the order could be, you could structure the order in such a way. I'm just asking if this, I'm not sure if this is legal or not. That's the reason why this is a legal question. Could you structure the order to say that you will euthanize the dog on such and such a date if in fact they don't, if they can't find another place to take the dog? And I think, that, and maybe it's longer than the 10 days as a condition that they have to have a kennel during that period of time. Could that be done, Kate?
You could. It is a 10-day appeal period. So they would be appealing the decision. If the decision is to euthanize on X date 21 days from now, in order to give them a chance to rehome the dog, they still only would have 10 days to appeal it.
Correct. But those are two separate issues, as I see it. I'm looking at,
Yeah.
the appeal period is one thing, it's the order that's what I'm looking at. Can you structure the order to say, we're going to revisit this issue in 21 days if the dog is not found to have another family, and it will be, and the order will be to euthanize at that point.
Yes, because the 10 days is for them to file the appeal. That doesn't take into consideration how long it's going to take the court to actually hear it.
Correct.
So, yeah, you could do it that way.
Okay.
In 21 days, we won't be here in 21 days. We'd have to either do 14 or 28.
You could do 28, but as long as the dog is not in the neighborhood, that respects the concerns of the people who were the victims, and also and protects the condition of the dog from any further potential
Well,
impact on the
in
neighborhood.
their letter, their concern was by the end of May,
In May 18th.
May 18th.
the 18th or, all right.
So
Which is
that would
a
fall into line with that timeframe of
Right.
28
Yeah, our
days.
next meeting would be
What board
May
meeting, right?
12th, if we did,
If we did 2 meetings from now, right?
so the May 12th board meeting would
So
work.
that falls in line kind of with the agreement from the O'Connors.
Right. That respects both parties' wishes in this case.
And can I ask a quick question? Are there any concerns with that, like from a humane's perspective for the dog, 28 days in a kennel? Any concerns there, Casey?
I mean, it's not ideal for a dog to live in a kennel for any length of time. But if we have to weigh the options of the dog versus the safety of the neighborhood, the dog's still going to get fed and cleaned and interacted with. We have people there at least twice a day, every day of the week. So it's not like the dog's just sitting alone in a kennel for that time period.
And they can visit the
I
dog
was
too,
gonna say,
right?
Right,
can
they,
visit the
they
dog.
can visit the dog as well. So the dog can still be interacted with and mentally will still be stimulated and get everything that it needs basically too. So, I mean, it's not ideal for a dog, but at the same time, if we're looking safety and neighborhood issues versus a dog in a kennel for a few weeks, kind of outweighs.
So in the past, we've issued muzzle and restraints for dogs.
Without kenneling.
without kennel.
without kenneling.
Yeah, I mean,
But I think for the O'Connors'
yeah.
wishes, I think we have to kennel for the 28 days.
Yeah, I mean,
Get the dog out of the neighborhood.
if they had not said that in their letter, I would have thought differently, but they're concerned about something happening in the neighborhood again. And
Do
I
we
think-
have-
I think the board has an
I-
obligation.
I know
to
we
think
have a
about that.
statement from them, but I don't know if we offered them, to be on video or anything tonight, but is it worth following up with them? Did they really mean they don't want it in the neighborhood at all? Do they mean before they get a next dog? We are making some assumptions on what they want. They said they don't want the dog euthanized, but
But
I
think,
think-
The letter
Come back
said
and-
they
yeah.
want the dog out of the neighborhood by the time they get their new dog.
so
Yeah.
Leah, the concern is that if you're declaring the dog to be dangerous, you don't want to put the dog back in the neighborhood. That's the issue.
that's what I'm thinking, like quarantined at home or something, if they had the electric fence. I'm curious what Casey thinks. And, if we do have this continued, is it possible to get them on video so we're able to interact with both parties rather than just the written statement, since we can't have the public hearing in the way we normally would?
I mean, I would think so.
Yeah, I would think so too. I mean,
Good,
anyone
but
with a
the question is, what do
smartphone
you
or
do
a
in the
laptop
meantime?
can
What do you do in the meantime?
be remote.
Yeah,
I think we have to make the decision tonight, Leah. And I personally like the idea of the 28-day kennel, giving them that 28 days out of the neighborhood to find or return the dog back to the foster home. That certainly gives them plenty of time. And the question is, do we deem the dog dangerous tonight or in 28 days?
So I guess, let me ask a question. If they find that they can rehome the dog out of state or whatever, do we have to make the dog a dangerous dog at all? Like, are we gonna have to make that decision?
if we continue the hearing, no.
Okay,
If we make a determination that it's a dangerous dog tonight,
then they have,
then they have to
Appeal.
disclose it.
yeah, okay. To me, I guess my thing is, I'm fine with 28 days till our next meeting. From what I've read, it seems like the yard is fenced in. They talked about getting an electric fence. If we muzzled and put an order in place, I don't personally think having the dog in a kennel for 28 days is the best thing in the world for the animal. So,
I agree. I agree with that.
Yeah, but I'm leaning more towards the peace of mind of the neighborhood.
Can I ask a question of the animal control officer about this dog bite scale? When up the top, it's got the definitions, and then down the bottom, it goes into a little more detail. Level 4, it says the dog has insufficient bite inhibition and is very dangerous.
Right.
And I guess my question is, if this is level 4 or level 5 bites, and it says here that it doesn't have inhibition and is very dangerous, I guess my question would be for Kate, is there some liability on the board and on the town with that kind of evidence if something isn't done? It's just a question.
No, there's no liability for the board, but obviously you need to be responsible and make a decision one way or the other. The 7 options don't really include kenneling. And I'm just reading through the 7 of them again. If you determine it's a dangerous dog, you can put a time frame on the euthanasia. It's going to be continued anyway if the owners appeal. So if the board determines it's dangerous and none of the other 6 options are helpful enough, because kenneling is not one of them. It does say there are various ways to restrain the dog, but most of them mean on the premises. If they voluntarily kennel the dog, that would be good. But if the board makes a determination that the dog is dangerous and that if euthanasia is the way to go with a time period, you could put in the order that they have a time period during which they can seek to rehome the dog. The board's not involved in any rehoming though, because you're not allowed to be. But if you continue, there's no liability for the board if you don't make a determination. And if the reason you're not making a determination tonight is because you want to continue the hearing to have the owners and the owners of the victim dog appear at the next hearing, that would certainly be a reasonable decision for the board. But I would recommend that you do impose some sort of conditions tonight, even if you do continue it, that the owners be required to restrain the dog on the premises under one of the ways, and I would defer to the animal control officer as to which method she would recommend.
I think one of the reasons why we're postponing a decision, Kate, is to allow the Flynns to rehome the dog more than getting anybody in here. We've got the information we need, I think. It's more giving them the opportunity to rehome them.
You can do that, and you can do that before determining whether it's a dangerous dog. So I would recommend that you continue it to give, for that exact reason, because the board is concerned that it's a dangerous dog, although that determination isn't going to be made tonight. You're going to continue it to give them an opportunity to rehome the dog and to give them an opportunity to appear remotely at the continued hearing to provide any updates that they have.
But
And
maybe,
obviously give the same opportunity to the owner of the dog that's across the street that had the puppy that was lost.
and, you know, Doc, maybe that doesn't have to wait 4 weeks. Maybe that could just be our next meeting. You know, hopefully within 2 weeks, I'd have some time to kind of figure things out. And then either have them on the phone. Like, I'm curious what, you know, if the neighbors are comfortable with the dog being quarantined at home versus a kennel. Like, we really didn't get an opinion on that, in my opinion. That wasn't something that was on the table when they wrote the letter, so.
No, I think at that point, we're the ones that have to determine that.
So I am curious, though, what Casey thinks. So, you know, in her professional opinion, you know, if we do wait, whether it's 2 weeks or 4 weeks, what is a safe and humane way to control this dog while the owners are afforded the opportunity to figure this out?
I think that we have to look at it as a safety issue for the neighborhood, and that there are obvious concerns with neighbors about the dog being there. And again, while it's not an ideal situation for a dog to be in a kennel for any length of time, we still have to consider the safety of the neighbors and the neighborhood and how they're feeling towards this situation as well. So I feel that the dog being in a kennel is the peace of mind for the neighbors that they're looking for, still affording the owners to give them that time to try to make arrangements to the rescue while ensuring the safety. I mean, like I said, the dog's cared for, it's there, it's being interacted with, and the owners could have that option to come in and see the dog as well, if they so choose to. So, I mean.
Mr. Chairman, there's sort of an unspoken word here that has to be recognized, and while I know, and I completely understand Leah's point here, and that she makes a very valid point, the challenge you're going to face with is that nobody wants to come forward and talk about this from the neighborhood, because they all live with the neighbors, and they all want to respect their neighbors' wishes, and they all want to be kind to their neighbors, and they don't want to create a sense of uncomfortable feeling coming forward and saying something on that's going to impact their dog. It just doesn't, it's just the nature of the business and how that happens.
And I will tell you, there's a lot of dogs in that neighborhood.
There is. So that being the case, you're not likely to hear a lot from people in the neighborhood about that. So I mean, even that being the case, though, if you talk to them privately, they'll probably tell you, geez, I'm nervous about that because of what happened. But you know, everybody's going to be hard pressed about what's the right decision here. There's no easy choice here.
I mean, at this point, I just to throw it out there, I'd like to maybe see a motion of continuing this for 28 days till our meeting on the 12th, to allow the Flynns to try to rehome the dog, but during those 21 days, the dog has to be kenneled until such time as another home is found, and then we'll make, and if they do, well, that's the motion. Anybody have any other thoughts? All right, let's see what you got ahead.
Okay. I make a motion to continue the finding with regard to the matter before us at this point to a date certain, being May 12th, 2020. But the animal itself must be kenneled and not allowed into the neighborhood.
At the owner's expense too, right? We talked about that.
Yeah,
And at the owner's expense.
Second.
okay. Any further discussion? I'm sorry, point of information. This being a public hearing, do we have to close the public hearing?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, unless you're, no,
Even if
you're
we're continuing
continuing
it?
it. The motion was to
That's right,
continue.
you're right, you're right, thank you.
So you want to leave it
Motion is to
open. If the
continue.
idea was also to have the owners come back, I heard two different things there, though. Have people come back at the next hearing, or do you want to just issue this? My recommendation would be to continue it, because you didn't make a decision one way or the other whether it's nuisance or dangerous.
Right, right. Just the
So
way.
continue it, don't
Ed-
close the hearing.
Just the way Ed read it.
But as a condition of the continuance, that the dog must be kenneled during
Yes.
that, during the period in between the next, now and the next hearing.
And maybe proof of that kenneling confirmed by our ACO.
Okay.
Yeah, and again, that's not one of the specific 7 options under Chapter 140, Section 157, but it's certainly a reasonable requirement, because that statute basically says various way, and Casey can correct me if I'm wrong, but it talks about the various recommendations for restraining the dog and protecting the neighborhood and so on. And again, you're not making the determination tonight, you're just continuing it.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
part of your decision is really a little bit separate from the statute. You're just requiring that while you give the dog owners the opportunity to rehome the dog, they need to give in return the safety and comfort level for the neighborhood of having the dog kenneled.
Exactly. All right, any further discussion?
Just under discussion, I mean, I'm all for the, putting it out to our May 12th and all that. I don't feel comfortable on the kenneling aspect of it.
All those in favor?
Even just under okay.
Go ahead, Leah.
Go ahead, Leah.
I was going to say, even under discussion, I mean, what does it hurt to put it on 2 weeks from now if they have some information? I mean, 2 weeks versus a month, I think, is a big difference.
You could.
Just gives them the time they need to, I don't know.
If we weren't in a nationwide shutdown,
Yeah.
I'd say yeah.
Yeah, they might need
They might need the time. I know
28 days to rehome it.
Dave brought up 21 days, and we just pushed it to our next board meeting.
Let's think of it that for a second, though. If in fact the dog is being kenneled, and it's costing them money to do this, it's a little bit of motivation to try and get that thing resolved.
But what if, because of the current situation, they can't get this dog anywhere for, 5 or 6 weeks? I don't know what it costs to kennel a dog, but I mean,
It's $20 a day.
oh, that isn't that much.
How much, 20?
20 a day.
Yeah.
All right, there goes that.
So it's not a significant.
Hundreds. I thought
what
it
we
was like staying at the
charge.
Hilton.
His dogs eat $20 of food a day.
More than that.
Again, though, I go back to like what Leah said, I would be more comfortable having the conversation with either of the parties in attendance, just to, and I'm not trying to not have the neighborhood safe by any means either, it's just.
Well,
Yeah, and I don't expect, like, Bill, when you were talking about neighbors coming up, I'm not expecting we'd hold a public hearing and have neighbors coming. But I think with any of our presenters and any topics in this time that we're in right now, everyone should be afforded the opportunity to attend virtually.
Well, they were afforded the opportunity to attend. I want to be clear about that. They were afforded the opportunity to attend virtually if they wanted to,
Chose not to.
Okay,
but they chose not to.
okay.
So that's a different scenario.
Okay, so I thought that they had to give a statement.
No,
No.
Okay,
They both have given statements in writing by virtue of the fact that they chose not to be in attendance tonight.
okay, that makes me feel better.
Okay?
All right, all those in favor? All right. Opposed? Passes 4-1. We'll get that information. Would you get that information to them,
Yes.
Casey?
Yep.
I'm sure they're watching.
Right.
Give them the opportunity to rehome the dog.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you, everybody. But before everybody leaves, I got an editorial, and I'm going to read right now. And I got to admit, probably one of the hardest things we have to do up at this board are dangerous dog hearings. Some of us have had 3 or 4, some even more. For some, this might have been their first time. And we try to address that at the last fall special town meeting. The Board of Selectmen at the time, in conjunction with the Animal Control Officer, Casey, put forward a warrant. I think, Casey, at the time, you had wanted to update some policies and bylaws, and the Board of Selectmen wanted to have a bylaw change to allow the board, at their discretion, to allow an independent reviewer to hear cases like the one we just heard. The Commonwealth allows for towns to allow a town manager to hear these very difficult cases. It does require a bylaw change, and we try to put that bylaw forward last fall. It was a reminder, the people who came before us and sent letters tonight are our friends, our neighbors, and our fellow townspeople. For the Board of Selectmen to decide to allow an independent reviewer, our town manager, to hear these cases would take an unbelievable amount of pressure off of the members of the board. And we're not averse to pressure, certainly budget issues, hiring and firing issues. But this is a unique situation, and I'm sure the Board of Selectmen will bring forth another warrant in the fall to allow us to move this case to an independent reviewer. And I would like the community to rethink this at that time, to allow us, at our discretion, to move that case to an independent reviewer. Thank you.
And Doc, was that your own statement or did that come in from someone?
That is my statement, probably culled from discussions I've had with a few other board members at various times in the past. Unless anybody else wants to say anything?
No, I will tell you, these are the worst, especially when you have the dog owner and the aggrieved and animal control officer all sitting at the table, and we're deciding the fate of what many deem a family member. That's how a lot of families deem their pets. And it's, deal with anything that's thrown at this board, but a dangerous dog is probably the worst, so.
Can I add a piece too, Doc? Just along the lines of what you said, completely agreeing with all that. Another piece relating back to what Bill said, if we were to adopt this bylaw and have this independent, review, whether it's, Bill or someone or a board of 3 or 5 people, it also would have the opportunity to have a public hearing, but maybe not in a televised way like this. It's hard for neighbors, especially in a situation like this, that there's a tragedy, but everyone wants to work to an outcome, to have it televised. So that's just a piece that I see as a benefit if we were to move forward as such for the next town warrant.
Great thought, absolutely. All right.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you,
Thank you.
Casey. I know,
Thanks, Katie.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Kate.
Thank you,
Your
Kate.
feedback was real important.
You're welcome.
All right. Have enjoyed the rest of your night.
All right, you too. Good night, all.
All right, moving on. Town elections and town meeting discussion. Gentlemen, yeah, Bob, why don't you come forward first and keeping everybody distant, and we'll talk a little bit real quick as an update about the rescheduling of town elections.
How we doing?
Good. So just update us real quick on what the state or Commonwealth will allow us to do and what your recommendation is.
So, as you know, when we were here 2 weeks ago, the state had passed a bill to allow you to postpone the town election. At that time, they had not also done the same for the town meeting. That has now happened last week. They passed that bill to allow the moderator additional rights to move the meeting. However, we have not posted the warrant yet, and as such, then you still have the right to postpone the town meeting. I think we've talked about June 8th and June 15th as the dates for the town meeting, and then, the town election and then the town meeting. And I think in speaking with Bill and Frank, that we would all be in agreement to go in that direction and have this board make that determination. And then, as things go, Frank would still have the option as the moderator, if it had to be, the town meeting had to be postponed further, he would still have that option.
Any further discussion? Ed, would you want to read the first half of that?
Certainly. I make a motion to postpone the municipal elections for the town of Foxborough scheduled for May 4th, 2020 to June 8th, 2020 pursuant to Section 1 of Chapter 45 of the Acts of 2020 and because of the state emergency declared by the governor pursuant to Executive Order 591, declaration of a state of emergency to respond to COVID-19.
Second.
Any
Under
further
discussion, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I know we kind of touched on this last meeting, but how does this work with folks that are up for reelection? Not only just David, but, all the other boards that have members coming off.
So the way that works is that anybody that is currently in a position would still be in that position until the vote is taken, and then they are replaced at that time.
Okay, thanks.
A couple of questions under discussion. So what happens if this goes longer than June 8th? Do we have the capability to kind of keep kicking the election down further?
Technically speaking, under current law, you're supposed to have everything done, including the town meeting, by June 30th.
Yeah.
Okay, if things get really bad, then there's going to be other changes in the legislation. I would expect to allow us to go beyond that date. And there is some wiggle room for the town meeting if it gets, if it continues to be bad and we have to go further than that. But I expect that we'll be able to get some form of action taken by June 8th for the election. And what do you think about the town meeting, Frank?
Well, I think if we have the town election, the chances of a town meeting are very good too. But in the event we don't want to have that many people in such a confined area, we can continue it. I, as moderator, can continue it up to 30 days as long as the state of emergency is still in effect. And we can continue to do that. And under the laws that were just passed, we can continue town meeting into July or into the next fiscal year. That is allowed, because nobody knows what's going to be happening. So they put that in there.
Was the same stipulation in for elections, or do elections have to be by June 30th?
Right now, there is no option to go into next fiscal year. But, if things continue to be bad, then they're going to have to make some legislation change to allow for that to happen.
And then the other thing I see on the document that we have, the Chapter 45 in the Acts of 2020, it says after the vote of the Board of Selectmen, the town must post a copy of the act, the vote of the board, and a sample ballot on the official municipal website at least 20 days prior to the new date of the election. So
Correct.
we have all of that now.
Yeah, as tomorrow, we will have all of that, and we will post that, I would say,
Okay.
within the next week or so.
Okay, because the ballot won't change even if
No,
we had
it's
to
already,
push it out another week or two.
I've already received the absentee ballots for that, so we have a sample ballot to post along with the
action of the board and a copy of the statute.
Okay. With this motion, should we include the date of June 8th, providing we can legally hold it or however?
I don't think you need to do that, because if there needs to be another change, we're going to have to come in, you'll have to have another vote.
Yeah, okay,
In either case, you'll have to have another vote.
okay, all right.
All right, all those in favor? And then Frank, just a quick update. You did get information since our last meeting about being able to postpone.
Right, but since the board voted to postpone the town meeting, I don't have to be involved at this point unless the June 15th meeting comes and we decide that it's not in the best interest of the town members to gather at that date, then I can continue at that point. But I think it was the right decision for the selectmen to move both the election and the town meeting into June. I think that was the cleanest and the easiest way of getting it done. Two things I would like to say. I want to thank Bob for all his work he's been doing on this. He's been really keeping on top of it, getting out the information as it's been coming forward. And the legislation has been changed a number of times, and every time there's been a change, Bob's been on top of it and getting it to all of us. The second thing I'd like to ask, though, is that the Board of Selectmen get the warrant out in a timely manner, as if we were going to have town meeting in May, so the town can know what's going on the warrant as soon as possible and be informed about it, even though it's going to be a small warrant. If we were still going to have it in May and I was going to continue it, the warrant would still have to be published by a certain date. And I think it's very important for the selectmen to stay to those dates, at least as best they can.
I had been talking with Katie and Cristina about moving on that. Katie sent me a copy of the warrant today. We'll have to amend the language to include the new dates, but I would suggest that at your next meeting in 2 weeks, that you use the date to close that and vote the warrant.
Yeah.
And
We were going to do that anyway,
Yeah,
right?
we were planning to do that.
Yeah.
anyway, so,
So then we'd have plenty of time to post it, it would get posted, and, you know, we're gonna have to post it in multiple places now because of the change.
Right.
We're gonna have to do that through Facebook and Twitter and other social medias, so reverse 911 is also suggested.
Okay. Yeah, probably not a bad idea.
Yeah.
All right, second half?
I make a motion to postpone the annual town meeting scheduled for May 11th, 2020 to June 15th, 2020, based on a recommendation of the town moderator and due to the state of emergency declared by the governor pursuant to Executive Order 591, declaration of a state of emergency to respond to COVID-19.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bob,
you, guys.
Frank,
Thank
for
you.
coming.
Girls,
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
thanks.
All right, thank you.
All right,
See you, Frank.
real estate taxes.
So, the legislation that the gentleman both just spoke about also included provisions in there to talk about the fact that you can move the date when your taxes, the property taxes are due from, it was actually supposed to be May 1st, you can move it to June 1st. And that is the recommendation that we have right now, given the fact that a number of people, are limited in their impact and their ability to pay those taxes at this point in time. So the legislation allows you to move it to that date. So there's actually two pieces to this, and the other one is to also take a look at extending the ability for people to apply for exemptions under the statute that we normally would provide to anyone who would be looking for those exemptions to pay their taxes under normal conditions. And that would be technically due until May 1st. Now, you would actually change both these dates to June 1st. So it would actually be two separate actions. One is to extend the date for payment of taxes to June 1st. The other one is to extend the exemptions to June 1st. Okay,
Okay. We'll take
anything else?
any discussion?
Yeah, can you send us these, the acts and, you know, section 10A and all that, because we don't have any of those on board docs. I wouldn't.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, sure, we
We'll
can do
send
that, yeah.
Mike's got them,
Sure.
yeah. All right, and we'll read the first one.
Okay,
Oh, you had them, sorry.
make a motion to extend the due date of real estate property tax payment from May 1st, 2020 to June 1st, 2020, under an act to address challenges faced by municipalities and state authorities resulting from COVID-19, Chapter 53 of the Acts of 2020, Section 10A.
Second.
Mr. Chairman, that is essentially the act that we're talking about, Chris. So in terms of backup information, that is the act itself. that we're
Yeah,
looking
but
to do.
I mean, there's gotta be, like, the stuff that Frank was just talking about, you know, the governor just passed it and all that. I mean, I'm not opposed to doing any of this, not opposed to, you know, moving it all, but I would like the documentation.
Sure, that's
Like
fine.
with, you know,
Yeah,
what it
the
is.
statute requires that, the new statute requires that the selectmen have to act on this, or the chief executive officer, so to speak, which is the selectman in this case. That was clearly defined in the statute itself.
yeah, alls I'm looking for is
Right, understood.
the statute.
We'll
I
get it for
mean, this is like the third thing tonight that I don't see any documentation on board docs for, so.
We'll forward it.
you. Yeah, we'll get it to you.
And for those at home, so just kind of like layman's terms, that means now everyone has until June 1st without interest or penalties to make that payment.
That is correct.
And I don't think it would hurt to tell everyone at home, just to remind them how they can make a payment since they can't come up in person right now and do it at the window. Because I did see, you know, some concerns about the fee for online, so making sure people know they can still drop a check in the box if they wish to.
Yep.
Like, get all that correct or miss anything?
So they can do all of the three major options are to drop it in the box, or to mail it, or to you can pay it online. You can also pay the taxes online as well. So, you know, those three options are the best options right now.
So I think, you know, whichever, if this does change, this could be a good thing, Cristina, to maybe blast out, because, you know, as much as we like to think people would watch, it's just not the reality. You know, putting something out in writing, I think, would be helpful, because there's been a lot of questions about this.
Of course, that will go out along with the town election and the town meeting postponement and new dates.
Great.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Second half?
I make a motion to extend the due date for real estate property tax exemption applications from May 1st, 2020 to June 1st, 2020, under an act to address challenges faced by municipalities and state authorities resulting from COVID-19, Chapter 53 of the Acts of 2020, Section 10B.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? All right. Bill, town manager's update.
So there were a couple things I just wanted to report out in addition to all of the COVID-19 items that we were working on, but there is the matter of that was mentioned earlier about the warrant and the budget and capital plan. So my plan is to bring all three items before you next week. And at that point, I'll also give you an indication of where we are revenue-wise, where our projections are, how I've been talking daily with George Sammy about this, and we'll give you a clear indication as to where we are currently. I do expect some of my recommendations on the budget to change with due respect to new positions, to place most of those on hold for the time being until at least the fall, and so we can have a better understanding of where we stand financially. I'm not sounding the alarm at this point, because there are a number of pieces of information we simply just don't know at this point on, and that is the fact we are expected to receive some financial assistance from the federal government. We have not seen how that's going to lay out first. We have not seen any indication of how that's going to work. We are expected to perhaps see some assistance come from the state. So there is, and also we will have a better understanding of our overall revenue picture at this point in time. Our biggest impacts, of course, are going to be in the areas of the hotel motel tax, the meals tax. Those are going to be impacted, obviously, at this point in time. Though restaurants are still staying open, but it's very limited, obviously, and so we want to be absolutely mindful of that. And then the other thing is that there are obviously people impacted by their jobs, and so it's going to. I think the payment of taxes is going to be slower. That's why the board just took the action that you just did to try and help that effort to some degree. So we know that that's all going to be played out, but if in fact the things that we don't know is when is the economy going to come back, at what point is that going to happen, and how long is it going to take to come back, and is it going to impact other events that are planned this summer, say at Gillette Stadium? Is it going to further impact MLS soccer, concerts, in the NFL season? I mean, those are obviously revenue sources to the town and for a number of people who work along Route 1. So we certainly want to try and have a better understanding of that. So that's why I think taking a conservative approach going into this annual town meeting will put us in a better position in the fall to address it, if in fact we have to make any adjustments. But at this point in time, we'll have a better understanding. I think the wait and get a better understanding of where we are financially will be better for the fall as opposed to right now. So the other thing is that we just had a major storm last night. I think a number of people lost power. To my understanding, all power has been restored back into the town at this point in time. It took a little bit longer in some areas because there was a significant amount of damage in certain areas of town. Others were spared, actually didn't lose power at all. I think a total of 600 customers lost power in town in total. And as a result, that power was restored roughly around 2 o'clock this afternoon. So I'm grateful for the efforts of National Grid to get here as soon as possible, and to try and get as much back on as soon as possible, and they were very responsive in that regard.
Tree and Park did a phenomenal job, too.
Yes, and that was my other piece, is that the Public
We had a
Works.
huge tree next to our house that went down, and when I got home this afternoon, it was, you wouldn't even know a tree fell. They did a great job. They were there late last night, too.
So that was the next part of my comment, was to say thank you to the Public Works folks for the fine work that they did. The Parks Department maintenance crews and the Public Works crews, who did a tremendous job of responding under difficult circumstances until the wind finally subsided. And that's part of the reason why it took longer to get the power restored, is the fact that they couldn't get up in the bucket trucks to actually address any power outages until after 9 o'clock last night. So it did take longer than expected under those conditions. So I do want to say thank you for everybody's efforts in trying to make that happen. So thank you.
That's it?
That's it.
Okay. Selectmen's update. Anybody have anything?
I had one thing that I just kind of thought of during the meeting, so I didn't talk to you about it, Doc. When we just did those reappointments for the, in the action items, I know last year we talked about kind of getting a handle early on for all the different boards and committees. You know, some of them are very active, and like Historical Commission, everyone knows who's on there, but some boards are less active. You know, are people still in town? Are people still members? So we had talked about reaching out to all the chairs to make sure everyone that wanted to be, you know, reassigned for the next, you know, term, because it's usually a 3-year term, still wanted to be. So I know Cristina wasn't here then, but that could be something. I know some departments are busier than others. You know, going out to those chairs and kind of, again, double checking who's on, who's active, maybe who's fallen off, vacant positions, things like that for the May, June appointments.
Okay. All right, we'll look into that, Leah. Put it under we'll discuss it the next time we meet, how best to do that. All right, thank you. And just one more thing, under Selectmen's update, you know, we had a lot of thank yous. What an unbelievable job a lot of people in our community are doing. I'm just going to throw out there one more department, and that's certainly the school department. Just want to point out that, Superintendent Burdos and her staff, Chairman Belanger and the school committee, and all the teachers are doing an outstanding job trying to keep our students engaged as much as possible. In talking to a lot of people around the state, our school department is way above the curve when it comes to keeping the students engaged, compared to a lot of communities that either just started a week or two ago or still have not even engaged their students. And for our school department to be, sort of on the cutting edge, and I think they're doing an outstanding job. And also would be remiss if I didn't say again, Mike alluded to IT on the town side, but certainly the same IT people on the school side, allowing for virtual classrooms. They've done an outstanding job. Other than that, we're good.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Stay safe.